And welcome back to the channel. This is a video that I have been excited to make for almost 12 months now. The first day when Jamie Foxx put up an Instagram photo and there were all these rumors about what was going to happen in the future Spider-Man film. We saw Far From Home a few years back. We know what happened at the end of that. This video will be spoiler free at the start, but it will contain spoilers towards the end, and I'll give you a warning. I'll only really be speaking about things that were in the trailer at the start. If you haven't watched the movie, just go and watch it. Do yourself a favor. But let's get into Spider-Man No Way Home. So spoiler free, guys, I want to talk about the acting. Tom Holland's acting in this film, absolutely phenomenal. Out of the three Spider-Men, I personally think that he has been the weakest over the years, although I have enjoyed parts of this trilogy. The Homecoming, Far From Home had some really great sequences, and between Mysterio, Quentin Beck, Jake Gyllenhaal and Tom Holland's Peter Parker in that film, great. But this is his film. It stands out for Tom Holland's fantastic acting. Spoke about 2 years ago, I spoke about Zendaya and her acting in Far From Home. It just gets much better in No Way Home. As for the storyline of No Way Home, I obviously won't give too much away. We know that there are some villains from previous films coming back. Those villains seen in the trailer, we saw Green Goblin. I won't tell you who he's played by, if it is Willem Dafoe or if the MCU introduced another one. You'll have to see that for yourself. As there's been many teasers relating to that. You've got Alfred Molina from Spider-Man 2, which is my favorite Spider-Man film of all time. This film is very close to overtaking it. Maybe with a few more watches, will overtake it. The film has some issues, but they are overshadowed by some fantastic moments and lots of nostalgia. There's some great references. There are some surprises nonetheless for the film, but great to see some of the old villains back. We knew Jamie Foxx coming back as Electro. We knew about Alfred Molina as Doc Ock. Some of the set pieces through Doctor Strange's world that we've seen in the trailer, like the train sequence, really, really cool. So if you haven't seen the film, I highly recommend going to see it. It feels almost like a direct sequel to Far From Home. I guess this is, I'm starting to get into spoilers, so it's a little bit of a spoiler, but it literally kicks off from that post-credit scene where Joe Jonah Jameson reveals that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, and we see Zendaya and Tom Holland getting away from all that. But there is so much to unpack, and I'm gonna start talking a lot more about the film now. So there's a very, very enjoyable film. Go and watch it if you haven't already. Let's get into some Spider-Man No Way Home spoilers. I'm warning you. So as I mentioned, Spider-Man 2 is my favorite film, and we had seen the bridge sequence with Doc Ock on the bridge. We saw lots of trailers regarding to that, or TV spots as well. And I gotta say, the cinema went crazy, including myself, when that scene was happening. We knew what was happening, we knew how it was going to go down, but just the way that the arms were moving slowly across the bridge and they pan out the camera, it just worked so well. I should probably speak about the opening of this movie. I didn't really like the music soundtrack. It was really, it was upbeat, and I guess it worked with what was going on, but it was really, really jumpy, as Spider-Man was obviously trying to get away from everyone, knowing his identity, including his not nemesis, but school bully in Flash Thompson, who I thought was really, really weak in this film. I didn't like him, especially out of the other Flashes. I think he's been pretty bad throughout these trilogies. I think they definitely could have done a better job with him in the MCU. But the first surprise of the movie, and I've given you that spoiler warning, you can't get angry at me now, is Charlie Cox as the lawyer. Now, this was awesome. Now, I did hear some rumors about this, but I never thought that it could be true. I didn't think it was going to happen, but it was so cool. I loved the Daredevil series on Netflix originally when it first came out. I was watching it 6 years ago, I think it was 2015 now, and obviously it ended with Bullseye. And it was so cool to see not only we didn't see Daredevil suit up, but we saw him as Matt Murdock. The cinema went crazy. I loved it. It was a short sequence. He catches a brick and he says, "I'm just a really good lawyer," when they say, "Who are you?" And it was just like, oh, that is just a tease. I thought he was going to be more involved with the movie or even have a longer sequence when I found out he was in it, but really, really cool nonetheless. Then we've got some nice Doctor Strange montages. We find out why there was ice in the lots of people were theorizing why there was ice in the inner sanctum, but we finally find out. Doctor Strange goes downstairs. Benedict Wong, as said in the trailer, tells him not to cast that spell. What does he do? He does it anyway. Peter keeps naming people who should know his secret, and the spell kind of stops. It stops in general, and that is when the villains start coming through. Now, I was a little bit disappointed with the bridge scene. I thought it was pretty cool with the Doc Ock fight and things. But we saw Green Goblin come through. As soon as Green Goblin comes through, though, it just stops. And it was like, okay. And the fact that we only saw one scene in this whole film with Green Goblin's mask was a little bit disappointing. But I liked seeing the balance between Norman Osborn and the interaction between Norman Osborn. When Doc Ock on the bridge says, "How is that Norman Osborn?" Or when he was in Doctor Strange's under when the villains were being kept underneath. But the way that the villains were found were really cool. And one villain who I thought really stood out for me was actually Sandman. I thought Sandman played more of an anti-hero than a villain. He would help out and he would, "Hey Peter," kind of thing, thinking it was his Peter. And I thought he was really, really good. Great to see Jamie Foxx with a comic accurate kind of design as well. Started off with the blue as well, and as people theorize, the suit being turned inside out was that Venom-like suit from the trailer. But there is so much to get through. The Goblin was a real standout for me. Now, I've mentioned spoilers. I'm gonna say it again. Spoiler warning. In the trailers, a lot of people, and probably myself including, thought that Happy would die. And unfortunately, it wasn't Happy who bit the dust in this film. We've seen lots of Uncle Ben deaths, but something that happens in the comics, or it's part of Spider-Man's story, is Aunt May's death, and that it was a brutal moment. It was hard to watch. It was funny because I thought she had died, and then she started being okay, and I'm like, oh, she's injured. Okay, wow, I'm surprised. And then it happened, and I was actually genuinely sad. I was genuinely shocked at how it all worked out. Willem Dafoe was absolutely outstanding in some of the fight sequences that he was in, including this one when Peter is just broken, when he puts him down the stairs and thing, his spider sense tingling and knows that the Goblin is in the room. But Lizard was, good to see him back, I guess, and we had 5 villains from the potential Sinister Six, but I thought it was a little bit iffy. But Green Goblin trying to control these villains in a sense, and it was really cool to see them using the Stark reactor, which was used by Electro to kind of power him up. But they can't do this alone. There was so many rumors for so long. If you haven't seen this movie, I am about to rip it apart, so please don't watch this video. But Ned needs Peter Parker's help. So what does he do? He opens a portal using this Doctor Strange magic, and we see an alleyway that looks exactly like alleyways that we've seen in the Amazing Spider-Man. Now, I do want to say one other thing. It was cool to see as Andrew Garfield comes out. Just saying that is so surreal as such a big Spider-Man fan and a fan of these original films. Regardless of their faults, they're still absolutely great movie. I want to say, why didn't we get to see the villains come through? We just kind of see them pop up in our universe through the multiverse. And I think that the structure a little bit for this film let it down in that sense. There were definitely some things that we needed to see for it to entirely make sense. It was so nostalgic, but as for the storyline, I'm just trying to work out whether I liked it, because I think it just seems a little bit too easy, especially, we'll talk about the end, but I'll tell you what, Andrew Garfield comes through, he's crawling on the ceiling, going to get the cobwebs. It was just some absolute, and Mary Jane throws bread at him, asks if he's got his spider sense, he says yes, and it's like Andrew Garfield is on our screen, and he's going to meet Tom Holland. We know at some point he's going to meet Tom Holland. If we've got Andrew Garfield, if we've got Doc Ock, and we've got Electro, there's only one person we want, and that is the 2002 Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire. Now, Toby doesn't come out like Andrew as Spider-Man. He comes out looking like a church kind of pastor guy. And the cinema, including me, I couldn't even speak. I was in a gold class chair, losing my shit at how good they did this. And then they have this interaction between the two. Eventually, after Aunt May's death, we hear, or Aunt May says, with great power comes great responsibility, which was pretty cool to see that. Very different, but the MCU, nice little take on that. We have so many references. We have references to MJ, we have references to Gwen Stacy, we have registers to Harry Osborn by Willem Dafoe. There are just so many great things about this movie, but we do have Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, and there are some absolutely brilliant. It took a while for Tobey to suit up. I really liked watching the scientific side between things and some of the quotes from the original films. And one thing I wanted to see, if these characters were in the film, I wanted to see them interact with their villains, and I was worried that they weren't going to do it, and they didn't. They had Toby interact with Doc Ock, trying to say that he's trying to do better, which is straight out of Spider-Man 2. There was just, and then there was this reshot part of Sandman talking with Flint, with Toby, sorry, Flint talking with Toby. There's just, I'm so excited, and it was so nostalgic to see it all and how it unfolds. There was some absolutely amazing fight scenes. That final battle, it was Toby who kicked the lizard in the trailer, and Andrew Garfield's hand. Now, it wasn't Andrew Garfield's hand, guys. He didn't save Mary Jane in the trailer with his hand. He does it differently. He doesn't use the web. He uses his entire body. Absolutely emotional moment. Probably one of the best scenes in the film, but one of the scenes that really stood out for me, and I mentioned Tom Holland's acting was on point. His anger against the Green Goblin, his anger throughout the movie, the punching, the evilness, this side of Spider-Man that we're seeing. He holds the glider up and he goes to put it through Green Goblin, and Toby stops him. It was probably the best part of the movie for me. It really showed what Spider-Man means to him, and it was just absolutely wonderful to see. We saw these scenes of Spider-Man swinging around. There's so much to unpack. Will these characters be in Multiverse of Madness? Well, I'm not too sure about that. They kind of wrap up their storylines, but there are some great moments with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. The werewolf's in it, Maguire's in it, the secret's out. I've given you your spoiler warning. Now, the film ends with Doctor Strange using the spell to forget everything, including Doctor Strange and the Avengers forgetting who Peter Parker is. So Peter Parker, no one knows he's Spider-Man in the entire universe now, which makes this a really interesting concept because they've announced this new trilogy. My friend has a theory, and I'm gonna let you know on here. My friend has a theory that the post-credit scene, which shows Venom being put back into his universe, but the symbiote staying behind, that we're going to get an Andrew Garfield version of Venom, a little break from Tom Holland as he's been through enough, and it kind of sets up future film. I want to speak about something that I saw on TikTok from the Daily Bugle, which was Flash Thompson being Patriot. Now, if he combines with Venom, could he become anti-Venom? That's a little theory that I think we can theorize for the future, but all in all, everyone forgets, including Ned, including MJ. There's some really sad scenes towards the end of the film, but it's all brilliant. It's well done. And then there is a comic book costume which is inspired by Andrew Garfield. It's inspired by Tobey Maguire. There's Miles Morales references. There's just so much about this film to love. I do think it had issues, but for the most part, I have to give it a pretty perfect rating. Spider-Man No Way Home is a 9 out of 10. I'm going to give it 1 point off because it has its issues, but it is absolutely the best time I've had in a cinema in a long time. And I've seen quite a few movies, especially recently. I could do some reviews on No Time to Die, on Ghostbusters Afterlife. We've got The Matrix coming up soon, and I love doing movie reviews, but this, you saw my trailer reaction, you've seen my Instagram. I had a suit ready to wear to this film, but it was going to be too hard to eat and drink with the gold class session, but I had a ton of fun with this film. I can't wait to see what comes next with the Spider-Man character. What a time to be alive. What a film. Imagine if we had Stan Lee in a cameo for this, but Easily one of the best superhero films of all time. If you haven't seen it, you shouldn't have watched this video and spoiled it for yourself. If you have, let me know in the comments what was your favorite part of Spider-Man No Way Home. Guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you guys later.